welcome back to Salmon's Pizzeria for the Championship Penitentiary. We have returned following a week off due to cup action and an unreleased episode due to technical issues. We have a very interesting episode, shall we say, considering I'm basically merging two episodes here. Joining us for this week, of course, Kieran Ashton. How are you, Kieran?
I am alright. I'm delighted to be back on. I think I've just about warmed up after my trip to Arbroath. Absolutely freezing there. Wind and the rain was. I mean, it was just your typical winter um, trip to Arbroath. But nonetheless, I'm delighted to be back on as usual. Absolute pleasure.
And once again, we are joined by Enzo. How are you, Enzo?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. I suppose I am a little bit annoyed about certain performances on the park and points that I personally feel as though we've dropped when we had an opportunity to pick a few up. But it's not the end of the world. There's plenty more football to be played. We've obviously got a massive game coming up this weekend. We've progressed in a couple of cups as well. Got some favourable draws, so we'll see.
Yeah, and speaking of the cups, I'd like to do a quick roundup of those. So the Scottish Cup draw was made after the third round fixtures. Dunfermline at home to Hibs, which is a TB pick. Again, that would be that one didn't really surprise us at all. You know, it's Neil Lennon's current club versus his former club, and you know I reckon that will be a interesting fixture. Sinnersmere against Morton. Could be a tricky one for Morton, especially given their sort of mixed form and Stenny being at the top end of League One. Aberdeen are at home to Raith Rovers. That game's been put on the Sunday, so that's going to be fun for me. You know, we've got a solid record against Aberdeen in the cups these past few years, so hopefully that continues. Ayr United are at home to Dundee United. I don't know what to make of that one because both teams are fairly mixed in form right now. I suppose we'll certainly get to with Ayr in a bit. An old championship affair for Airdrie against Arbroath. That one's been played in Airdrie, so maybe not quite the home advantage Arbroath are looking for, but still should be an interesting one. Queen's Park are away to Stranraer, so Enzo, you've got yourself a fun away day down to the Dumfriesshire coast.
I like Stranraer away. I've done it loads over the years. Obviously, we've been in the same division as Stranraer quite a lot. Last time we went down there, I think we won 5 or 6-1 in a cup as well. Stranraer obviously a good League Two team on really really strong form at the minute, but our under 19s beat an even better League Two side last night in the Challenge Cup. So I'm not overly concerned about it. I'm looking forward to it though.
Partick Thistle, meanwhile, they're at home to Montrose. Kieran, your thoughts on that one?
I mean, it's a boring tie, but it's winnable, I suppose. Saying that, I mean, if we look at Cove knocking out St Johnstone, I think that was like 2 or 3 weeks away now. You can't take any of these ties lightly. It's a cup game. It's a one game off. I'm not going to sit here and say we're going to gobble them 5 or 6 nil when that's never really the case when we play these lower league sides. I mean, you've got to look at our result against Cove last night. We only beat them 2-1, and they took the lead as well. So in the Challenge Cup, but to say I'm looking forward to a home tie against Montrose is putting it lightly, but it's a winnable tie. Hopefully we progress and get a bit more money, especially and hopefully try and draw one of the bigger dogs in the next round. But nonetheless, looking forward to it.
It's one of those where it's like, as mentioned, Raith have got Aberdeen away, which it's like I'm hoping that will be a good crowd for that one. I imagine Raith will probably sell out our allocation trip up to Penitentiary. Who knows how many Aberdeen fans will turn up, but it's one of the biggest sides. So I'll be looking forward to that one. Motherwell are at home to Ross County. As we'll get on to Ross County in a bit, but I'm fully expecting a Motherwell win with that one. And as mentioned by Kieran there, St Johnstone managed to get knocked up by Cove, which you let us down, lads. Like, every championship team got through apart from St Johnstone, which I don't think anyone was expecting. Morton nearly got knocked out. Who was it? It was Peterhead. They beat
Peterhead, yeah.
Yeah, went to penalties, didn't it?
Yeah, that one went to penalties. So, aye. Could have had two championship teams out, but no, just St Johnstone who went out after extra time. And as mentioned, Challenge Cup. We've had the Challenge Cup. Day before this was recorded, so after the championship games. But like half of them were after championship games, and that half of them were like the week prior, just because of there was a big storm, so a bunch of them got called off. Alloa against Airdrie. Airdrie managed to win that one 3-2. Arbroath beat Kelty 3-2. Partick Thistle came from behind to beat Cove 2-1. St Johnstone beat Hearts B in the cooperation agreement derby. That one finished 1-0. Queen of the South managed to beat Dunfermline 4-3. That was after being 4-1 up, which brought great joy to myself. Queen's Park managed to beat Clyde. Enzo, I believe you were at that one.
Yeah. I'll give you a very, very quick rundown. I think we made 8-9 changes from our starting 11 from the Dunfermline game. So it was very much a significantly weakened squad. I don't think at any point we had more than 3 first team regulars on the park. So it's one of these ones where nobody picks up any knocks. You get through. You beat a team that you don't particularly like. No complaints. Ultimately, it wasn't the greatest performance. I'm not going to lie, and some of the younger guys probably didn't do themselves justice given the opportunity that they were given. But ultimately, the main thing is you're in the hat for the next round. That's all that matters.
Raith again played a very rotated squad, and they managed to beat a very rotated Aki's squad 5-2. Believe it or not, Aki's still trundling along at the time of this recording. Ross County managed to actually win a game. They beat Celtic B 4-0. Stirling, meanwhile, managed to beat Morton on penalties, so that was a good laugh. Draw, meanwhile, Airdrie are at home to Eva Montrose of Spartans. That game got called off again due to the weather. Arbroath are at home to East Fife, who are sort of mid-table in League One right now. Ayr, they're at home to Stranraer. Partick are at home to an Inverness side that put 9 past Dumbarton. Just mental.
How crazy is it that was that? So that was Dumbarton's record ever home defeat. Beaten, I think they lost 8-0 to Celtic at some point years and years ago. And I feel as though whenever you read on like a club's Wikipedia page or something like that, their record home defeat or just record defeat in general, it was always like 50, 60, maybe even 100 plus years ago. So for that to happen in 2025 is just it's wild, man. I don't know. I think like even if I were a Dumbarton fan, it would have got to the point where I'd be like, just like humiliate us as much as possible, because this is at least give us a bit of a laugh and give us more reasons to go for the club's throat, because I know that they're not particularly pleased about how certain things are being run right now. But mental, absolutely mental.
Aye.
So that game is also on BBC Alba. That's the TV pick. Of course, they're not able to choose Rangers or Celtic B, seeing as they're both out of the cup now. Queen's Park, meanwhile, they're at home to Forfar. Your thoughts on this one?
Absolutely fine. Again, my mentality in the cups is, for as long as possible, get as easy a draw as you realistically can. So Stranraer in the Scottish Cup, Forfar in this, I'd take that all day, every day.
It very much seems that way. Raith are against Queen of the South. Now the thing is, we knew that we were going to be playing either Queen of the South or Dunfermline, and it was a case of, on the one hand, want Queen of the South because one, it means they beat Dunfermline, and that's really funny, and also considering they're in League One, again, a winnable tie, but also you kind of want a derby. If you're given the opportunity of a derby, you're kind of going to want it. St Johnstone, meanwhile, they face off against Ross County in an all-championship affair, which is pretty interesting for this stage. And Stirling are at home to Steny in the one game that isn't involving a championship team. So that's the Challenge Cup out the way. As mentioned, it's like just it's a weird one because it's like they massively upped the prize money coming into this year, but then they just have this really weird. So it's like if you're in League One or League Two, you have to go through the league phase and face off against the Premiership B teams, and as we saw with this recent round, how just about everyone just played a rotated team. It is a weird one. This competition now, it's still got that sort of stigma of just don't really care unless you reach the final.
I mean, I've kind of gone off it altogether after getting to the final last year and losing 5-0 with like 14 players out injured, to be honest with you. So, yeah, I mean, I've always been of their belief. Do you know what? We've done really, obviously, they've changed it in recent years so that was it last year they changed it potentially so that we didn't have the Welsh and
Yeah,
Northern
this is the
Irish
first season of the changes, yeah.
We've always done really, really well in getting those draws. We've had 2 away draws in Wales and 1 in Northern Ireland over the years. It's class, man. When we played Cliftonville away and we went through there, or over there, I should say, one of my favourite away trips of all time, going to Belfast to watch Queens. It was phenomenal. But it kind of took some of the excitement out of the draw when those teams all stopped taking part. And with this kind of B team nonsense and the fact that they're forcing the part-time teams to play even more football when they already have a pretty stacked schedule right now anyway with this group phase that they've implemented. I don't know. I've gone off it a wee bit.
It's like getting rid of the B team, not the B teams. Getting rid of the B teams would be great, but
absolutely get rid of them.
The Welsh, Northern Irish teams and all that. It's just a real shame. You know, it's like we got who did we get? We got Glenavon and Cliftonville, and they were both at home, which was just devastating. Just missed out on a trip to Northern Ireland.
Aye. That's unfortunate. We've had obviously Cliftonville, like I was saying. We also had TNS away a few years ago, and we had another one of the Welsh teams whose name I have unfortunately forgotten because they all kind of sound the same. But we won all of them as well. It's just always been it's always been good for us, but it just takes so much of the intrigue out of it when you don't have that possibility of what is going to be for the majority of the closest thing to a European tie in our lives.
We played Ski Nomads at home in the 2019-20 season, the season we reached the semi-final and get absolutely pumped by Callum's Raith Rovers. But it was good. It was good playing them, but saying that, it was probably one of the worst games of football I've ever seen. It was so bad. And that was the same season they knocked out Kelly in Europe. So I was expecting them to come over and absolutely pummel us, or at least give us a good game, and they were shite. They were so bad. So I don't understand how Kelly managed to get knocked out Europe by Ski. And that was like that they were playing like one of Thistle's like worst squads, at least probably the worst squad I've seen. Rafa Davita ended up scoring for us as well. That day, it was brutal. Ended up on like S4C as well. It was live on the Welsh TV channel, so it was absolutely wild. But as you said, it's just it's one of the ones. It's forcing the part-time teams to play to play more games, as you've said, when they've already got a schedule that's pretty much stacked, as Enzo said. So, it's one of the ones. Unless you reach a final, obviously you get a day out of the final. We haven't reached the final since 2013, so it'll be good to kind of avenge that penalty heartbreak against Queen of the South. But it's one of the ones. If you reach a final, it's good. And if not, you're not really arsed about getting knocked out.
Meanwhile, Raith have reached 4 finals in the last 15 years. 2 of them lost one, and one just didn't get played because it was meant to be against Inverness, but that's when COVID came in. So we won 2.5 titles in that time.
We have obviously, in I think maybe over the past year or two, they've increased the prize total for the whole tournament. I think that, like, for the entire tournament, the prize total is up to something like 1.5-2 million in that sort of region. That's not like to win the tournament. That's like for everybody to be divided. But obviously, the further you get, the bigger a slice of that you're going to take home. And I suppose for the clubs themselves, there's value in that. But you see, just like through the week there, like we were talking about before, the number of players being rotated out, especially from championship sides, it's clearly just not a priority.
It's like with the league phase, how it's set up, and with the B teams, it's like there is a guaranteed minimum of 2 B teams getting through.
Yeah,
and it's like all the SPFL teams made it through quite comfortably. So it's a shame because it's like I want to like it, but it's just difficult. They just make it difficult at times. But we'll move on to a competition that we mostly like, and that is of course a championship. Where we start off with Friday night under the lights, Ayr versus St Johnstone. Both teams were coming off of a 0-0 draw the previous weekend, and boy did they make up for that with this one. Mark McKenzie would open the scoring for Ayr with a strike from the edge of the box, just 8 minutes in. Jamie Murphy would then double Ayer's lead after 14 minutes, tapping home into an empty net after Ethan Walker made a nice run down the wing, squared it across goal. And it would be 2-0 at half time. But St Johnstone in the second half, my word, they really came back into this one, didn't they? Matthew Folds was there to tap home at the back post after like 47 minutes. McPeak would get an equaliser 77 minutes in after David Marshall dropped a cross, which came to no surprise to find that he was at fault for something. McPeak would then give Saints the lead in the 88th minute with a close range effort going into the roof of the net, and then Kai Fotheringham, very scrappy goal in the 92nd minute just to settle it. 3 points for St Johnstone. And it was looking at Ayer's season so far that I realised they might just have the worst home form in the division. They've only won 2 of their 9 games at Somerset Park. I think
surely ours is worse than that. We've won 1 home game.
That's a good point. I was going to say it's like outside of the bottom 2. It's like that is really bad.
We have won quite a few.
One at least. Let's get 1-2. I know that at least, but it's like with the sort of playoff aspirations that Ayr have, that is shocking.
That's shocking.
But Saints meanwhile just really good turnaround from them. Kieran, your thoughts on Ayr, St Johnstone and this game as a whole?
I think what you've said is pretty much nailed on the head. I think from a St Johnstone point of view, massive result for them, especially they were under the cosh a wee bit, just being knocked out by Cove in the Scottish Cup. As well as that, they were kind of faltering a bit in the league, especially after getting beat by us at Firhill. But massive comeback for them. I thought Ayr in the first half looked pretty good. I thought they were well deserved for their 2-goal lead. I think St Johnstone had a couple of chances, but more so half chances. But I think Ayr were more than deserved for their 2-goal lead. But as soon as St Johnstone got their first goal back, and I think it was fairly early on in the first half they scored the first. When they pulled one back, I just knew it was happening. And Ayr will be absolutely raging about how quickly they collapsed, and how quickly they fell away, especially bottling a 2-goal lead. Bottling a 2-goal lead in itself is shocking. I think I've witnessed that too many times as a Thistle fan. But at home, especially at home, it's not good at all. And I think it just kind of sums up their season, just very, very inconsistent. I think they will still probably sneak one of the playoff positions, but there's one of 3 or 4 teams I can say in the league that could do that. I'd probably put Raith in that conversation, especially after the result on Saturday. But and we'll go on to just talk about that. But I put all the pressure on us to beat Arbroath, and obviously that didn't happen. Spoiler alert. But it kind of put all the pressure on us, and very selfishly, I was very gutted that Ayr didn't hold out, at least get a draw. But Matt, it's pretty much a sign of champions. It's a sign of a league winning side coming down, coming back for 2 goals down and winning in that fashion as well. 4-2. I mean, 3-2, fair enough, but then scoring another, beating them 4-2 is pretty good for St Johnstone point of view. But Ayr, I don't know. I think they're just perennial bottle jobs at this point. But not good at all.
I thought it was it was a really entertaining.
It seems that way.
I watched the game on the BBC on the Friday night. I thought it was an entertaining game, which is good because there've been a few this season that maybe haven't been brilliant watches that they've chosen. And I get that obviously the current content they've got gives every team 3 home games now, so they're going to unfortunately end up with the odd stinker here and there. That fortunately wasn't one of them. And I would say for me that felt like a real sort of battle between the two managers because obviously Valakari coming into that game, I don't think St Johnstone fans have necessarily turned against him, right? But I think they're certainly starting to question him a wee bit more. And one of the concerns was that teams have managed to suss him out a wee bit and maybe conceding more goals. And they're obviously just not. They just haven't been picking up points as what they had been for the first couple of months of the season anyway. So, as you say, Kieran, Ayr started really well. They looked really, really solid in the first half. And while St Johnstone got one back in the second half, I didn't necessarily think they would go on to win it, but I thought I wouldn't have been shocked at that point if they'd at least picked up a point. But fair play to Simo because he did change it up altogether. He changed the shape up, and there was just a bit more urgency about how they played football. And on the other hand, Scott Brown clearly had no idea how to respond to that, and Ayr were just totally out of ideas when St Johnstone were going at them. If I were an Ayr fan, I would probably. I think there are warning signs there about Scott Brown. I've been saying this for a wee while, to be fair, and it might just because I don't particularly like the guy, right? But I think there's an inevitability about Scott Brown's tenure at Ayr, and I don't think he's ever going to achieve what they expect him to achieve. And it's not as though Ayr are like a tiny budget team or anything like that. They've got a bit of money. They have invested money into that squad and into the stadium and the club's infrastructure and stuff over the past few years. And I do not believe that if they're ever to achieve what they want to do, which is obviously ultimately promotion to the Premiership, I don't think he's going to be the man to do it. And I think he will find himself getting punted at some point, or maybe he'll leave altogether because somebody else is daft enough to give him a job. Who knows? But yeah, fair play to St Johnstone. As you say, Kieran, that's the sort of result that you look back on if you win a league title and go, it was nights like that got us here.
Isaac, you're saying about Scott Brown and his sort of job security at this point. It's like at a minimum, we'll be expecting the playoffs. Yeah. But it's like with the inconsistency that they have shown, if there's a very real chance that they don't do that, just because. It's like Dunfermline are another side who are seemingly very inconsistent. Raith have vastly improved, and we'll get onto that in a bit. And, it's like Arbroath, it's like, we'll get onto them in a minute, but it's like Arbroath out of like the mid-table teams have been the most consistent. And, it's like that's going to be the deciding factor, really. If Arbroath don't fall off, then that Ayr team is not getting the playoffs. that's what it seems like at this point.
Well, there have been, from an Arbroath perspective, there is potentially reason to be slightly concerned about some of the rumours that Ross County are maybe sniffing about David Gold, which would be problematic for them, I'd imagine, because he's obviously been a huge part of their success. I know that they have co-managers with him in Hardy, isn't it? The other Hardy? It's Hardy, isn't it?
I've got Hamilton in my head for whatever.
Hamilton, of course it's Hamilton. Apologies to any Arbroath fan listening. That was just nonsense in my head there. But obviously the two of them came in when Arbroath were struggling a little bit last season. League One ended up winning the title, and now look how their season's going. So that would be a concern. Might just be a bit of paper talk, though. You know what it's like.
Alright, so speaking of Arbroath and as Kieran mentioned about the pressure on Thistle, it was Arbroath. We're at home to Partick Thistle. Arbroath coming off a 2-1 win away against Dunfermline, having been 1-0 down. Thistle, meanwhile, drew 0-0 away at Ayr. Kieran, you made the trip up to a very cold and windy and presumably wet Gayfield. Talk us through this one.
Aye, so good day out. Let's just get it that way. Let's just get out of the way. First of all, mind you, very heartbroken. They ran out of smoky pies. I think it was like 10 minutes before the game. So I was a bit gutted, never got to try that. But the steak and black pudding pie more than done the trick. Absolutely fantastic. But talking about the game itself, Wilson changed the shape. He dropped Chalmers and Fitzpatrick, so he dropped the two wingers. I thought he played a more narrow formation. He tried to play with a lot more physical players, and you can see that with the introduction of looking at Beth. And he played with two up top as well, played with Samuel and Watt. I think he'd done that to try and play a bit more direct, to kind of try and combat the weather conditions that you experienced up there. But I can see why he done it. Ultimately, in the end, didn't work. But it was a very bold change, and I'll give him credit for that, for trying something different to try and combat the weather up there. But in itself, first half pretty cagey. I think we had the better chances in the first half. The wind was in our favour, but I just don't think we used it to our advantage as much. I don't think any team other than Arbroath knows how to use the wind in their favour. Samuel did have the ball in the net. I think it was about the 25th minute, something around there. But it was called offside. And I think as well, not Derek McAdams. I kept calling him Derek Adams. It's not. It's Aidan McAdam. But Aidan McAdams, our Arbroath goalkeeper, thought he had an excellent game for Arbroath when he was called upon. He made 2 or 3 good saves. Made one in the first half as well. But first half all in all was a bit of a non-event, other than us I think we had most of the pressure, but again, it wasn't a good spectacle in the first half. And then second half came, and 4 minutes into it, Arbroath took the lead through Finlay Marshall. And you could definitely see, but looking back at the highlights, I watched the highlights there. The wind played its part 100%. Josh Clark took his goal kick, and when he punted it, when he took the goal kick, it landed like 20 yards from his goal. And it landed right in the middle. Arbroath latched onto it through their pressing, and Finlay Marshall just put it beyond Clark, and that was it, 1-0. That we were 1-0 down, and then since then, Arbroath just searching for a second. It was pretty much all Arbroath after they scored their goal. And then on the 65th minute, they got their just rewards. Gavin Riley, I think it was a header through from, it might have been for Finlay Marshall, not entirely sure. But I headed it through the face of goal, and Gavin Riley just latched onto it, and that was at 2-0. And again, I think they did deserve that second goal. I think Josh Clark made a good couple of saves as well. They put a couple past the post, and we just couldn't answer it really. Couldn't really respond to it. And then we would be handed a lifeline. I think it was on the 70th minute. Craig Watson gets sent off, and at the time I thought it was pretty harsh. But looking at the replay, looking at the highlights, going back, it was a late challenge, and he did go in with stud showing. So you've definitely seen reds given for them. You know what I mean? But at the time, I did think it was pretty soft. And then after that, we kind of buckled up our ideas a bit and know how to play football a wee bit. And then Alex Samuel would get his goal. He scored, I think he scored in about the 75th minute, just about 4 minutes after Craig Watson gets sent off. And for the last 5-10 minutes, we battered them. We had all the pressure. Aidan McAdams again made a fantastic save from Ocean Smith to to make it 2-2. But in the end, I'm not really downhearted by it. It was a game you couldn't really analyse with the conditions and all that kind of stuff. And I think Mark Wilson came out and said that as well. Yeah, it's just one that was very difficult to analyse. But not really downhearted by the result. But I think St Johnstone winning on Friday, I was a bit gutted we couldn't at least get a draw out of it. Especially the last 5 minutes, how we played. I thought we absolutely battered them. But first half didn't take our chances. That's what kind of cost us. But I suppose I'll just take it on the chin. You know what I mean? Mark Wilson tried something, change the shape, but just ultimately didn't work out.
I think obviously you talk about the conditions up in Arbroath. Conditions were bad everywhere on Saturday, to be fair, across the country. I'll talk about that a wee bit when we come on to discuss the Queen's Park Dunfermline game as well. But obviously Arbroath, given its geographic location, is going to be hit worse than some other places. And I do think occasionally the conversations about the wind at Arbroath are slightly overblown. Like, I've been up there loads of times and the conditions have actually been perfectly fine for a reasonable game of football. But when it's bad, it is really, really difficult. And I suppose the problem that the bad habit that some teams try to get into when it is really, really blustery like that is not keeping the ball on the deck. You need to keep the ball on the deck. Don't let the conditions do any of the work for you, because you'll just be overplaying passes, crosses not going where you want them to do. It sounds as though maybe this didn't quite manage to use that, whereas maybe Arbroath were a little bit better prepared for it.
I know, definitely, Enzo. You could see even with I think Macbeth had a couple of times when he was on the ball and he would just punt it rather than looking for the pass. He would just punt it straight up, and it would just not do that. It just wouldn't work out for us. And I did rate Mark Wilson trying to combat that and playing a lot more direct. But he's and starting a lot a more direct team with the starting 11. But it's just one of the ones you've got to take on the chin. You know what I mean? I'm not raging about it. I am a bit gutted, as you said, with the St Johnstone result and how we didn't really capitalise. Well, not capitalise on that, but kind of keep in touch with them, albeit we are still 3 points behind. But just one of the ones, you know what I mean? Got to take it on the chin and move on.
Yeah.
So you were saying about the conditions at Arbroath, but it's like when Raith went up like a month ago, it's like going into the game, you're thinking it's Arbroath away in winter. This is going to be like blustery and all that sort of stuff. It was perfectly fine, and I'd say a good chunk of the game was actually played on the deck from both teams. So it is interesting. But Arbroath, with that result, it's like they've guaranteed themselves third for Christmas, which pretty good Christmas present for their fans, and are basically the opposite of Ayr when it comes to their home form. They've only lost once at home this season, and that was their 5-0 thumping against Dunfermline. But across the calendar year, they've only lost twice. They only lost once in the second half of their League One winning campaign at Gayfield. So it's the opposite of Ayr in the fact that they've turned Gayfield into an actual fortress. And like you say, Kieran, it's like with the St Johnstone result, it's like at half time you're thinking, oh, this is perfect, we got the chance to capitalise on this. But it's like this one is a case of matching them, and no, you've dropped 3 points to them. There's a gap again, which is a shame, I guess.
Yeah, I think from like an Arbroath perspective and from the outside looking in, now obviously we played Arbroath outplayed. Well, the first game I think actually maybe the scoreline wasn't quite as reflective of as the game, but when we went up there to Gayfield, we were just absolutely pumped. They totally destroyed us, and I still expected, maybe a part of me still does, I still expected that they would fall away as we got into the kind of 12 to 18 game mark of the season, but it hasn't happened yet. And honestly, every good result they get now, I'm less and less surprised. Like I'm almost thinking that they're favourites for games like this. And obviously, when they go in to play against Ross County on Saturday, I'll see them as favourites for that too. And obviously, County are a bit of a basket case, and that's a separate conversation. But I would never have thought that at any point this season would you have had Arbroath going to Dingwall and thinking, yep, they'll go up there and they might be expecting to win.
It's like Arbroath. It's like I was saying about the Ayr one, about how it's like the playoffs are basically decided on if Arbroath fall off. Because it's like they absolutely deserve to be fired. Absolutely, be the most consistent outside of the top.
Definitely,
two. Yeah. It's just like if they're at home, they're very difficult to beat, and even away, it's like even in the games where they have been beat, and some of them they've been beat comfortably, you can see that they're a good side. You see that they're very organised, all that sort of stuff. Exactly what you want, and it's been a very, very good first half of the season for Arbroath. But we'll move on to the one that I believe just about everyone has been waiting for. Raith Rovers against Ross County.
Raith were coming off of a 0-0 draw away to St Johnstone. County, meanwhile, lost at home to Airdrie. And for once in this podcast, I have actually had to go back and watch the Raith highlights because that much stuff happened. So Raith would get the first goal 8 minutes in. McMullen would cross the ball into the edge of the box. Jack Hamilton would head it down. And Scott Brown was charging into the box and just smashes it home 12 minutes from like 12 yards. And yeah, it's like it was a weird one because you look at it and it's like the ball is there in the middle of the box and it's like 2 or 3 county players and they just don't get there somehow. Like Scott Brown's is coming in like a train and gets there in front of all of them. 5 minutes later, County would then concede a penalty. Paul McMullen's just fouled in the box. Dylan Easton converts, easy enough. 37th minute, Jay Rowe, who got a hat-trick against Hamilton, continued his scoring race. Scoring, just smashing it from about 25-30 yards, and it just flew into the other bottom corner. Great goal to score an eye. It's just 3-0 at half time. It's like I think the only other game in the league this season we'd scored 3 was against Arbroath and we won 3-0, and they all came in the second half. So just absolute dreamland for the first half, and second half it somehow got better. I could not believe what I was witnessing. Hamilton, 47th minute, 2 minutes into the second half. Brown would play the ball to Hamilton, who's about 30 yards out, and it's like first time passes it down onto the wing. Paul McMullen runs onto it and just passes it across the box. Easton's there, puts it in the bottom corner. 4-0, first time finish. 47 minutes in. We would then manage to go 30 minutes without scoring, which felt weird for once. Josh Mullen would have his shot saved after he ran into the box from the wing, but for whatever reason, the county defence sort of leaves it, and then when one of the defenders does go to clear it, it just goes straight off of Enzo, who had just come on. He would end up deflecting top corner. That made it 5. And then again, 5 minutes later, Tony Docherty just ran through half the county team without being challenged. We get a shot away, edge of the box. Keeper spills it. Jack Hamilton's there. 6-0 Raith. I could not believe this. I genuinely could not believe what I was witnessing. This was Raith's biggest league win since beating St Mirren on the opening day in August 1992. It's the first time we scored 6 goals since beating Cove 6-1 back in the back end of the 22-23 season. Should be noted that Cove went on to finish bottom that season. This was just unbelievable. This unbelievable performance, best Rovers performance I've seen in years, really. And Doogie it was really good football as well, outside of the goals being scored. We were creating so many chances as well. It's like this game could have easily been at least 8, 9, maybe even 10. Maybe even 10 with the way it was going. And it's just good to see Rovers playing with confidence as well, because that's really what was missing. It's like Jack Hamilton had a good game, Paul McMullen had a great game, and it's like there's that stuff I wouldn't have been saying 2 weeks ago, praising McMullen and Hamilton in the same sentence. But it's like with this result, we're now up to 20 goals in the league, so we're nowhere near not near the worst teams up front anymore, and we're back to having a positive goal difference. So, it's wonderful. Just everything just going wonderful for Doogie and Raith Rovers. And it also brings us, it's like until, it's like we're now tied with Dunfermline for 5th. We're just behind on goal difference now by 4. So, it's like if we did win 10-0, which is what I was hoping at points, could have been above them.
We're only a point behind Ayr now, which, as previously mentioned, it's like they're a bit iffy right now. So, it's looking like the only way is up for Raith right now. But I suppose the big talking point has got to be Ross County. Oh my god. That was the worst performance I have ever seen from a team at Starks Park. And, it's like I have seen Raith in League One, I have seen us play non league teams, I have seen us get battered. I have. I could not believe how amateurish they were. It's like the first goal and the fifth goal and the sixth goal, and it's like they're prime examples of how not to defend. Just no effort. It's like there was no runs being made. There was wayward passes everywhere, and it's so strange because on paper that is a squad that challenges for the title. It's something we all mentioned at the start of the season, and it's like Kieran, you were the outlier saying about how it's like, yeah, on paper they have a good squad, but it's like they weren't playing that well, and you had them in fourth.
Yeah.
And we were like, whoa, that's a bit out there. They are deservedly the bottom team of this division.
Yeah.
They're awful. They are absolutely awful, and it's just so there's no cohesion whatsoever. It's like there was points where it's like County did hit the bar, they had a few shots, and with some of them, you could see it's like the technical ability is there with those players individually, on paper, again an excellent squad, but it's just not a team at all. And it's like with some of the signings that they did make, it's like some of them are quite old. It's like who was in? It was Declan Gallagher, Trevor Carson's in on loan from Dundee. He was the one in goal for this one, and it's a case of this is like the last season they're going to play at a professional level. The way this is going for them this season, it's just really, really bad. And like this result, it also was the final one for Tony Docherty and Callum Davidson. They both got the sack on the Sunday. It's like we were expecting it to be announced at half time, the way it was going. So it'll be interesting to see who does take that job, because it's not like again, this is very in this division it's exclusive to Ross County, but it also applies to Inverness in a case of taking that job. It's like you can't just stay at wherever you're living, because it's like you've got the core central belt, and it's like at most an hour between a bunch of teams, perfectly fine. But it's like it's like Ross County's 100, 200 miles away from everyone else, and it will be interesting to see who they hire. As mentioned, Gold at Arbroath is being linked. The day after Doc and Davidson got sacked, Stuart Kettlewell got sacked by Kilmarnock. He was previously at Ross County and did all right with them, so be interesting to see if he gets a job. But it's like with that team, it's just bad. It's like they're doomed, especially if Ronan Hill for whatever reason is sold. If someone makes an offer that Roy McGregor can't refuse, then it's like that team. If that happens, just put the red bar over Ross County's name.
I mean, I want you to be right so badly, because that would obviously have a positive impact on my team. But for as poor as they have been, I still think they'll go out and do something daft in January and bring in 6 or 7 players potentially. And I could see them splashing the cash on somebody that's been at this level and done it before. This is partially why I'm still really, really pissed off that game we were supposed to play them in a few weeks ago that was on the TV on the Friday night got called off, because it felt like a really good opportunity to pick up another 3 points. And here we are, on the back of a couple of games where we didn't really get what I think we should have out of them. The Callum Davison being punted as well, part of it was really interesting to me because I was of the assumption that the reason he went up there and took the assistant manager's job was because he then felt that if and when Tony Dock got sent packing, that he would just kind of naturally slide into that role. But obviously that wasn't to be, and a totally separate conversation. But now that obviously Davison gets sacked from us, and now he's been sacked as an assistant manager as well, I do wonder where his stock's at for a guy that probably had a few reasonable opportunities, or he would have had, possibly even other Premiership jobs. I don't think he would get one now. But yeah, they're a mess. They're an absolute mess. And it's really just a case of they sign players, and I think I've talked about this on here before. But they sign players, they sign names, but they didn't. There was no plan. Like, they sign players for the sake of signing players that have decent pedigree, but it wasn't with the intention of, okay, I have this game plan in mind, this shape that I want to play, this kind of style of football that I want to bring to Ross County. And I suppose I'm primarily blaming Don Cowie for this, since it was his transfer window. And it just doesn't work. It doesn't click. You don't have guys playing for each other. It looks as though there's maybe a bit of a horrible team spirit as well. Declan Gallagher in particular has obviously struggled big time this season, among others. I think they're too wealthy for them to finish bottom. I can't see it long term. I think they'll claw their way up to maybe 7th or 8th come the end of the season. However, bear in mind that it wasn't that long ago, I was still saying that I thought they could finish 4th. So I've changed my mind somewhat there as well.
So you were saying about the transfers. I'm just having a look. They brought in first team players anyway. They brought in 17 players.
Yep.
And it's like, you go through the list and you see you've got Declan Gallagher, 34 years old. He's come under a lot of criticism, and it basically
understandably
his legs are gone, that whole sort of thing. And you're just like, surely that would have been something noted. Nicky Clark's coming from St Johnstone, and he wasn't even in the squad. He was in the stands. Gary Mackay-Steven, he came on at some point in the game, and I don't think he did anything. Trevor Carson is in on loan from Dundee. He's 37, and he was not. he conceded 6, really. And it's like we see about like the possible arrivals in the January transfer market, and you've spoken before about the sort of issue around bringing players in on loan, because obviously there's a maximum. I really should have looked at what the maximum amount of loan players is, but the 5 players you've got in on loan are Trevor Carson, again, who was in goal for this game. Sean Mackey, I've got no idea if he was playing. Miller Thompson from Dundee United, Ryan Duncan from Aberdeen, and James Scott from St Mirren. And it's like we joke about them having a big squad, but it's like like you say, it's like they just signed names. There was no plan or whatever. It's like first transfer window you've ever had in Football Manager, where you're just like, oh, I know that name, I'll sign him, that sort of stuff. It's just ridiculous when you consider, it's like the amount of money they have. It is the one thing that is possibly going to keep them in this division. Just the knowledge that they have Roy McGregor, who's worth at least 100 million or whatever. But even then, there is rumours about him scaling back to an extent his investment, especially considering the way it's gone this year. But it's like they're going to be on their 3rd manager before Christmas, and it's really, really, really bad up there. Kieran, your thoughts on everything?
I think what needs to be said has been said about Ross County, to be honest. It seems that they've become a bit of, this season anyway, a bit of a retirement home for players that are chasing one last fucking wage, you know what I mean? Like you've got Ross Docherty there as well. I don't know if you mentioned him. He was an player they brought in, and I thought that was a really good coup for them. Obviously, he's had his issues with injuries. Even when he was with us, he had his issues with injuries, and we got quite a big one at Dundee United as well. But I still think there was a player in there. He's not. performed at all. I remember when we went up, I think it was in the League Cup and the League, we played them like 3 weeks apart. Blitzos had them in his back pocket the entire game. Aye, it's wild. It's wild to see the downfall. I mean, not gonna lie, after the fucking trauma that club caused me a couple of years ago, I'm glad that they're having a wee bit of a painful time at the moment, and long may it continue. But I just think they look like a team that they're relegated already. They've chucked it, and they just don't look good at all. As you said, obviously they were. I think it was 2-0 down, and they hit the bar, but that was their only real shot at goal. I think. Obviously, I think they had a couple more as well, but it was just wasn't enough. But I wasn't. So I personally thought they would have they would at least gave Docherty and Davidson till January. But if it's not working, it's not working. And for a team that should be realistically up the top end of the table, playoffs at least, it looks like the only playoffs they'll be getting is relegation playoffs. That's not looking good at all for them. I think Ronan Hale's probably the only one that gives a toss about it at the moment. It's not good at all.
As I forgot to mention with the transfers, there was also Aaron Lyle that he brought in from Morton, and then a month later or whatever, loaned him back to Morton. It's just utterly bizarre dealings up there. And there's also Adam Elmsley joining from Aberdeen on a free, but he's been put out on loan to Cove as well. It's very scattergun approach, and it's failed miserably, to put it lightly.
I mean, I don't envy the decision makers there. I think obviously a lot of the flack now seems to be turning towards the chief exec, because obviously once you blame the players, blame the manager, that's fine. But at a certain point, you have to look slightly further up the food chain. You can't really grumble too much about McGregor because ultimately all he's doing is putting money into the club. I can't recall the chief exec's name, but he is certainly in the firing line in recent weeks and months as well. So we'll see how that kind of pans out over the next wee while. Certainly going to be it's a vital January. I mean, January is always important, but Ross County are in the slightly unique position where, I mean, so January is a difficult month to sign players because you're mostly looking at loanees or guys that are out of contract, unless you want to go out and actually spend money. But Ross County are one of the few teams in this division that can actually afford to go out and spend money on permanent signings in January. So, yeah, certainly one to watch.
It's Stephen Ferguson who's the chief executive. I did see County fans with the sort of clip art, black and white face with the circles across over it, that sort of stuff. But yeah, like you say, it's like with the January market, County do have the ability to spend, and that's what sets them apart from everyone aside from St Johnstone. But then, for most of us, it is a case of utilising the loan market to seeing who's out of favour in Premiership clubs that can do a job down at this level. And like I said, where's the flexibility in that with the amount of players that they've got in on loan?
I think I've got to mention your tweet as well, Callum, about them. I think it was shown. I think it was shown to me. I think it might have been Sunday. It was one of that. It was something like you were talking about the state of Ross County, and I can't wait for them to spend the GDP on the GDP of Uganda.
I put a tweet at half time about how it's like Ross County were like one of the worst teams I've ever seen, and I cannot wait for them to spend the GDP of a small African country to fix their problems in January. And so I tweeted that at half time. I didn't expect it to get even worse. So that probably tells you about my expectations for them at this point. It's just shocking. It's like as I mentioned before in this podcast was about how a team hasn't been relegated from the Premiership and then the Championship the following season in about just shy of 20 years. Unfortunately for Kieran, it was Partick Thistle, but the way it's going, even if, as Enzo says, they should theoretically not finish bottom. If they do finish ninth, with the way it's going, they can go down. they could absolutely go down to League One team.
Yeah, the playoffs are a bit of a riot, though, aren't they? Because it's all totally form dependent. I mean, imagine, let's say they're 10th right up until the final sort of 5-6 games of the season, and they go on a wee run of form, and it drags them up to. It totally depends on how you're playing when those games actually come around. So, but I take your point. No, I mean, they absolutely can get relegated. Yes, absolutely. And I think for them, it would sting even more because it looks as though Inverness are on their way back up.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we've been missing out on the Highland Derby, but it's like if they come up against Alloa, for example, I fully expect Alloa to couple them. I really do. At this point in time, Steny, Queen of the South, East Fife are all sort of in that sort of mix, and it's like I could see those teams sort of sneaking a result, but it's like Inverness are going to run away with this league title. They're already 5 points clear, and that's with their 5-point deduction, and they've got a game in hand. But Alloa, it's like I've seen Alloa twice this season. I've been impressed with them both times, and it's very likely that they'll finish second, and I will not be surprised if they win the playoffs if it's against Ross County, especially Ross County. But the other team who might end up in that playoff is Queen's Park. Queen's Park, meanwhile, they were up against Dunfermline. They came off a late defeat away to Morton due to just a ridiculous overhead kick from Michael O'Halloran to score his first goal in 3 years. If your luck's down, Enzo.
Yeah, look, right. It was obviously an incredible finish, right? But I still maintain that if Ewan Murray hadn't been injured and didn't go off the pitch, he would have that. It's his bread and butter is not letting guys do things like that. Obviously, it was a moment of magic from O'Halloran, but I still maintain that his head would have got on that before he had the chance to do anything. And honestly, it's still frustrating because I don't think we played well that night. I don't think either team did, if I'm honest with you. We didn't play well that night, but I think we should still have been able to hold on for a draw and get 1 point, and then obviously moving into the game against Saturday, I'll just get into it. I suppose we've got Dunfermline coming to visit, who obviously themselves weren't necessarily on their best form of the season. Conditions absolutely wild. The wind in Glasgow was bonkers, and Murray was back in the squad. Fortunately, I was really pleased to see that. So Murray was back in the squad. Josh Fowler was back in the squad as well. So he didn't play against Morton either because he was out suspended, having accumulated 6 cards, 5 of which for dissent, I believe. So that's something he needs to iron out of his game a wee bit and just stop being a bit of a dafty and shouting at the referees, because you're never going to get somebody to change their mind by doing that. Seb Dross had been dropped as well, which is something I think a lot of Queen's Park fans had been asking for a while. It seems as though Sean Crichton does have a kind of, he's quite loyal to Seb Dross, but he was dropped on Saturday, which again I was quite pleased by. I don't think he would necessarily have played so many minutes this season if Michael Ruth hadn't picked up an injury so early on in the season, but he should hopefully be back next month by all accounts. We'll see if that actually happens. But yeah, wind was wild. The first half I don't want to say we dominated, right, because it wasn't a good game of football and neither team was particularly good, but we were certainly the better team. We were definitely the better team in the second half. And the goal did come. So the goal came from Carlo Pignatello, a brilliant run down the wing, hit the byline. The ball's kind of played nicely into the box. And Henry Fieldson clips the ball into the back of net, which was brilliant. I'm really pleased for Henry. He's a player that I have a lot of time for. I really like him. And I think that was his first ever goal in senior football, which is great. But I think one of the things about Henry Fieldson is, I think a lot of people forget that he's still only 19, and it's because he's one of these rare examples of a guy that came in from having been released from a sort of academy down south at 18 or whatever age, or 17, 18, whatever age he was at the time, and he just took to first team football immediately, and he's been played centre back and left back, and he's just never looked out of place. So really pleased for Henry. And at this point, I'm just thinking, just don't do anything daft. And Dunfermline are not in this game. They're really struggling. So we take it into half time, nothing each. Absolutely fine. No complaints, especially given the conditions that just were not conducive to a good game of football. And in the second half, we came out, and I think even for the first kind of early stages of the second half, we are the better team. There's a the Dunfermline goalkeeper, Terrell, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. He made a really, really good double save from Roddy McGregor and Ewan Murray. And I feel as though if the second had gone in, that probably would have killed it off. They didn't really look as though they were up to too much at that stage. But then they brought on Rudden, Cooper, and McLeod around the 60th minute. And when they brought on their subs, they had a period of time, maybe kind of 10, 15 minutes or so leading up to their goal, where they were really coming. They were coming alive. They were definitely coming back into the game, and I felt as though the goal was coming. I felt as though the goal was definitely coming. And unfortunately, it did. And the circumstances. Oh man, the circumstances. So, Seb Dross did come on after me saying that. I was quite pleased for him to be dropped. And as soon as he came on for Grant Savoury, we just started losing the ball in the middle of the park every single time. Started losing the ball in the middle of the park every single time, man. And he does exactly that. Dunfermline break. And as they break into the box, the ball goes out for a corner, right? Ewan Murray picks up a wee knock, so he's on the deck a wee bit, which is fine. He rolls off the pitch. Ewan Murray is absolutely screaming and shouting at the Queen's Park bench, do not send the physio over to me. Don't send him over because I'm not going to be able to come back on to defend this corner. The physio comes on anyway. He doesn't defend the corner. Again, it's his kind of bread and butter, header out the box, no bother at all. And that doesn't happen, and the rest of the defence in Calferry don't cover themselves with glory, and it finds the back of the net. Despite the fact that they were putting under a wee bit of pressure in the lead up to the goal, I actually thought after that, kind of remaining 10 minutes, it was pretty balanced. If anything, we looked the more likely to find a second, but it really comes down to, for me, Dunfermline went up to that much. They really went up to that much, and I don't really have too much I can comment on, really. I thought in the first half in particular, there was a lot of kind of passing the ball about side. There was lots of kind of meaningless movement that was never actually going to achieve anything. And if I were a Dunfermline fan, I'd probably be a little bit disappointed by that performance, and I'm sure they absolutely are. And performances in recent weeks in general, I suppose. From my perspective, though, the frustration really stems from the fact that I still maintain we've got a solid enough 11, but see when it comes to 60th, 70th minute, when the guys are running out of gas, we just have nothing on the bench, man. We have nothing on the bench. And it's going to kill us. It's the number of late goals that we're conceding because we've been forced into making changes because guys are starting to struggle a wee bit. It's a consistent problem for us. It's been a consistent problem for us all season, and it's probably going to relegate us, and it is what it is. If that happens, whatever. Because the club's obviously going through a lot of transition anyway. But it's quite frustrating, really, really frustrating.
As you were saying about Dunfermline, it's been a weird one recently, and as you say about Rudden and McLeod coming on, it's like those are two names that are normally starting. I believe they've been
Cooper as well. Cooper came on, who he hadn't played in a while. So Rudden's been injured for a couple of months. Cooper's been injured, I think, possibly even longer than that. And for me, actually, Josh Cooper was their best player when he came off the bench.
So it's like possibly injuries are down to that, but there is obviously the other big missing factor that is Neil Lennon, because he's now 3 games into a 6-game ban. The first of those being the defeat against Arbroath, where they took the lead and then threw it away at the end. But it's like even without there's that to navigate. It's, you do wonder, could Neil Lennon have done better in these past 2 league games, and of course the Challenge Cup game against Queen itself that they lost 4-3, and at that point it was 4-1 to Queen itself.
Yeah,
it's
possibly worth.
But
possibly worth highlighting. I can't comment on any of the other fixtures, obviously, but the game at Lesser Hampden against us. So if he'd been suspended for that, he would have been in the Royal Box, I believe, which is close enough that he could probably still shout at his players and shout at his bench and take full command of the game. But unfortunately, obviously, a pretty sad person is that his dad had passed away, so he wasn't in the country at all. He wasn't at the game at all. So obviously, condolences to him. That's horrible, horrible news. But it's obviously, I mean, I think he's probably been a big part of the positivity when they have been decent this season and their fans have been excited. So finding himself being cut out of these things all together for 6 games, which is a long time.
Mhm.
It will have that. It will have that effect. Definitely.
So, and you look at the next few fixtures, it's like they're at home to Ayr. Yeah, it's like they're at home to Ayr and away to Raith and at home to Ross County. It's like those next 2 games are massive in regards to the playoff picture. And it's like not having Neil Lennon now is definitely going to have a huge effect on that. It's like it's for a derby match, you want to have your manager at least, and especially when it comes to how tight these playoffs are. It's like it could only be decided by a point at the end of the season. It's like it's not unheard of. It's like Raith and Thistle last season. I think it was either a point or goal difference.
I think it was goal difference in the end, because that game you guys came to Hampden, you had to just score as many as you could.
It was something like that. But it'll be interesting to see how they navigate these upcoming fixtures. Kieran, your thoughts on Dunfermline, Queen's Park?
I think as well. I think what's been said pretty much that I've got noted down here. I think Queens Park definitely deserved a lead. I think they were possibly, but quite probably, as Enzo said, probably the better side. Without there being much of a good game of football going on, I thought Queens Park did deserve. If a team did deserve to, snatch the win, probably it was the hosts. But I think it's still. I know it's Angel's a bit disappointed. It's still a pretty decent result. You could say it's a point against Dunfermline. But saying that, you're annoyed around, especially Ross County getting beat as well. You'd be wanting to kind of take advantage of that and get as far away from them as possible. But there was a lot of thing as well on Twitter as well saying that Dunfermline were pretty lucky to get away with a point. And you're saying that, you're saying, yeah, it could be a point, but I think it was the subs for Dunfermline that changed the game from them. And that's what a lot of people on Twitter were saying as soon as they brought on the likes of your Ruddens and I think it was Coopers as well, was the name that was mentioned. As soon as they brought them on, it changed it for Dunfermline. But it's just gone back to the whole thing of consistency for Dunfermline again. It's been a difference between them, being a playoff outfit and being mid-table, just nearly getting the playoffs and missing out. And I'm not surprised at all Dunfermline have had a result like this, especially when they've won a good couple now. They go right, they can kick on here, and then they go on to drop points to teams that are lower at the lower end of the table. I was trying to say, but the next 3 games for Dunfermline are massive, and them not having Neil Lennon there, I think it will have an effect on them. Especially for the derby match as well. You want your manager there for that. So it's one of the ones that could honestly I think there's 3 or 4 teams that can sneak it. I think, in my opinion, they can sneak that the last 2 spots, but I don't know. I think only time will tell. But
Yeah.
it's wild. There's at least 3 or 4 that in contention with that they could potentially sneak it.
Do you know? I think
I was going to say is that I'm also disappointed in the fact that Queen's Park couldn't hold on to the win because it's like if Queen's Park won, then natural order would be restored and Raith would be back above the bar. But Enzo, go on.
Sorry, just very quickly before we move on, I was just going to your point that I agree with you, Kieran. See, the thing is, in isolation, a point is fine, but we're at the stage where we just need to win games of football one way or another. We've drawn far too many. We've drawn 8 games now this season, and I would happily take if I could turn 4 of them into wins and 4 of them into losses. I would quite happily make that trade in a heartbeat. And the other kind of frustrating thing, but also heartening thing, and thing that kind of you can cling on to for a wee bit of positivity is, even though we've lost 7 games this season, we've been competitive in every single one of those, bar 5 of those games. Obviously, Thistle hammered us, and the game up in Arbroath, we got absolutely hammered, right? But St Johnstone, they've beaten us twice by 1 goal. Morton beat us by 1 goal. I forgot. Thistle beat us by 1 goal in the game at Lesser Hampden as well. Arbroath beat us by 2 goals at Lesser Hampden. However, we were ahead in that game, and just we conceded 3 terrible goals. But over the piece, it's not as though they completely dominated us for that. We've been really, really competitive in every single game this season, bar 2. So it is very, very frustrating when you're still sitting on 2 wins over, out of 17. It's really, 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 really disappointing, and it does just come down to the inexperience and the lack of options off the bench and whatever else. And we'll see how things go, but we've got a game next week against Airdrie, which is a must-win game. We have to win that game of football. There's just no two ways about it. I don't think we will, but we have to.
Yeah.
Speaking of Airdrie, we can finally move on to the final game of this weekend's fixtures. Morton were at home to Airdrie. As mentioned, Morton managed to grab a late winner against Queen's Park. Airdrie, meanwhile, managed to get a win away at Ross County, which saw them leapfrog both County and Queen's Park to get themselves out of the bottom 2. This was a bit naff. Like, Morton were very much the stronger team in the first half, but weren't able to get a goal. But Sean McGinty would get a goal for Airdrie's 62nd minute, heading home from the edge of the box, and that's about it for this game. Really, it's like Morton overall were probably the strongest side, but just could not convert any of their chances. But the real talking point from this game has got to be the post-match interview by Billy Davies. It's a good laugh. I highly recommend listening to it because he's just raging. He is utterly raging and saying about how, it's like he couldn't believe that Morton didn't win that game. He was saying about how Airdrie must be wondering how they won that game, and also being disappointed in Airdrie, which as a manager of an opposing team is really weird to say. Just like saying I expected more from them. And it's like they beat you. You lost.
This should come as no surprise to anyone because Billy Davies is a complete crackpot and he has been for years. Everyone knows that. He's a maniac. And it was a very, very embarrassing interview, to be honest. Like, if I were an Airdrie fan, that would be so satisfying to have caused that sort of meltdown. I love when that kind of thing happens. It's going to be really interesting to see how long they kind of persist with him, though. I mean, because there's now, currently, we're looking at it. So I'll come back to, obviously, Ross County are looking for a new manager. Morton technically still looking for a new manager as well. Airdrie, interestingly, despite their form, still nothing's been confirmed with Aaron Taylor-Sinclair, which I find really, really interesting.
He's been at Airdrie now, I think it's like Pine Bovril when they sobered up eventually, posted the table with all the managerial names, because obviously Docherty and Kettlewell got sacked, and it's like Aaron Taylor's ATS has been there for, at the time of that being posted, which I think was the Monday, was there for 53 days. He's basically been there nearly 3 months at this point.
So you have to assume, or you have to at least question then whether maybe he doesn't want the job permanently. Because otherwise it would have been it's like they must want him. It's a formality that they'll want him. But maybe for one reason or another he actually just doesn't want to take the job on a permanent basis at this stage. Which no doubt would be a disappointment for Airdrie if they had to go out and find somebody else to replace him with.
Yeah.
It'd be a great laugh if they bring in someone and then they just recreate their pre-ATS form.
Exactly.
No wins. No wins, like 4 points out of possible 10 games, something daft like that. But I know ATS doing a very good job at Airdrie. And in regards to Morton, please give us Billy Davies permanently. It won't happen, but if it's leading to these sort of interviews, please give us more. It's just really funny. But Kieran, thoughts on Morton and Airdrie?
massive result for Airdrie again. Down, obviously they're down there. I think they're still 8th at the moment, but either you seem to continue to impress under Aaron Taylor Sinclair, but I thought he'd been made permanent by now. I don't know why they've not done that. Maybe it's to kind of not put pressure on him. Maybe I don't know. But you would certainly expect with the form they've been in as well. I'd have thought they would have definitely bit the bullet and went for him. Just say, look, give it to you permanently. He deserves it 100%. Aaron Taylor Sinclair does deserve the gig. But that just on that Billy Davies interview again, or Billy Davies, sorry, it's insane. Generally, you can't act like that. You know what I mean? It's wild, absolutely wild. But aye, pretty much. So it's just one of the ones in it. It's just a Morton result in it.
That sounds about right. Considering, it's like with that result with Airdrie, it means that ultimately the result for the rearranged fixture between Queen's Park and Ross County, for the most part, doesn't matter to them at this point because they're 3 points clear of Queen's Park and 5 clear of Ross County now. And of course, it's mentioned Queen's Park, Ross County game in hand because they have to still play each other. But it's like they're 4 points up of Morton now, and who knows what will happen with them, especially depending on who they hire. Because I think I said before about how looking at that Morton squad, it's borderline League One, and it's especially with some of their performances this season. So it seems like they could very much be dragged down and replace Airdrie in the relegation scrap.
It's a good example though, isn't it? Airdrie's very quick and unexpected turnaround is a good example of how one way or another your season can flip quite easily. Like just all it takes is 1 or 2 wins, and before you know it, things are looking very different for you. So, and I mean that teams at the bottom or the top.
It definitely has gone that way. Well, Chell, right, we finally got through all the games. Time to look forward to next week's matches. No Friday games. So on the Saturday, there is Airdrie against Queen's Park. Enzo, as you mentioned, this is very much a 6-pointer.
Yeah, we have to win. There's no messing about. I think the best way of doing that. So one of my biggest issues with the way we've played at times this season, and it tends to get worse as games go on, I suppose, and it's why we've not been able to kill games off, is that we're just not brave. Like even sometimes we'll take the lead and we'll mess about too much. If we take the lead against Airdrie, I think that's something that they might struggle a little bit with. If we can get an early-ish goal, certainly the first goal in the game, and just don't do anything fucking stupid, which unfortunately we're very, very prone to, then it's possible. But I can't say I'm particularly optimistic about it.
It does seem that way. It's like a win for Queen's Park. Like you say, it's massive. It brings them level on points of Airdrie, and I think would actually, no matter what the score is.
No, I think our goal difference is 2 worse than them, so we would have to win
by 2. So if you win 1-0, I'm not sure if you would go above them or not. But it's like there's a very good chance.
Results against each other, goals for, we would probably have a. I don't know, man. I genuinely couldn't tell you. Listen, I'm not particularly worried about that. Just give me the 3 points and then we'll take it from there.
I didn't think that far, but it's like if Airdrie win that game, that opens up a big gap to the bottom 2, depending on other results. So a very big game for them. The other big one, Politics Thistle against Raith Rovers. It's like I'm very much looking forward to this one. I always look forward to games against Partick Thistle. They're never dull, and it's a trip to Fir Hill. I was looking through my what's it called, Footballogy, and I think Fir Hill's my 3rd most visited stadium, behind obviously Starks Park and East End Park across my life. But it's like with this week's results, it's given a brand new sense of optimism, that we can really go into this one and take it to Thistle. and I imagine Kieran there's a bit of fear after the fact we scored 6.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to. I think if this game was like 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, I'd be a bit more confident considering how well we were doing and kind of how bad kind of form yous were in at the time. We would have took this fixture a month ago, not now. But I mean, listen, I think it's a game that can go either one or two ways. It's one of the ones. I think it'll be a decent game. It never is dull. More so at Firhill than Starters Park because it always is dull for me whenever we go to Starters Park. We're always on the receiving end of a fucking
That's because we never win.
yeah, aye, a shite defeat. You know what I mean? But I know it should be a good one nonetheless. Looking forward to it, shall we say? I just hope we can, dust off last week's result and come back and get back to winning ways and try and keep up with St Johnson for as long as possible.
And then what else have we got? We got Ross County at home to Arbroath. This could go, it's like county managerless again. Could be interesting, but with the way things are going, I'm fully convinced Arbroath are going to get a win here. And
like I said earlier on, they'll be favourites for it. They absolutely should be favourites for it.
Oh, 100%.
It's like Arbroath actually look like a competent football team. They look like a football team, full stop. We'll put it that way. Following on for that is Dunfermline against Ayr. That game just screams 0-0 the way things are going. Which I'll happily take because, it means Raith, potentially. I'm not counting the chickens, eggs, that sort of stuff yet, but, a Raith win would put us into fourth, and I'd be very happy with that. And then finally, of course, St Johnstone are at home to Billy Davies Greenock Morton. So can't wait to see how that one turns out, especially with the post-match interview on Morton's end. But we'll move on to the table then. St Johnstone with their win are now 3 points clear of Partick Thistle, thanks to them losing away at Arbroath. Arbroath sitting third now, 29 points. For 5 points clear of Ayr, which is incredible to think about at this stage of the season. Dunfermline and Raith tied for fifth, 4 goals in it on the goal difference swing, both conceded the same amount. And then 2 points behind is Greenock Morton in seventh, Airdrie 4 points behind on 17 points in eighth, and then Queen's Park 14 points, but with a game in hand. And then bottom of the table, Ross County 12 points. This has been a pretty long one. It might be on par with the pre-season one when it comes to length. But if you have made it this far, then thank you for listening / watching. And we will be back for more championship action next week. And goodbye.
Catch you after.
Thank you.